Some of our most meaningful questions about heaven are also the most personal. And so welcome to the Curious Faith Podcast, where faith isn't the absence of questions, it's learning where to take them. Each episode, we tackle one honest question and seek a biblical, thoughtful answer. My name is Ryan Johnson, and I have two curious companions for today's episode, Jonathan Light and Dr. Michelle Shelton. And Michelle, you're going to read today's question, I think, so go for it.
Do you think animals will go to heaven?
Okay, so read that again. Do you... No. Okay, no.
Do you think animals will go to heaven?
Wow. So do you think animals will go to heaven? How ironic is that, Jonathan, that we have a veterinarian reading that question? It's almost like that was foreordained or prearranged, either one.
Or predestination.
Predestined, yeah, something like that. Yeah. So do you think, and once again, going back to the reason that these questions exist, like we understand that people develop companionships with animals, with their, pets. Is there like a politically correct
fur babies?
Oh, no, please don't.
I don't think that one's politically correct.
But I mean, yes. But once again, even you could trace the terminology, how it shifted. I used to go to the shelter and buy a pet. Now you're adopting. It's like, and so I think the language itself shows the deep, deep emotional connections that exist with pets, with animals, fur babies, I guess, if we want to call them that. If I ever have any one of my kids tell me that I've got a grand dog, I might just break something,
I'm begging them to do the dog baptism.
The what?
The dog baptism. I'm begging. I'm gonna get that.
The dog baptism, is that a thing?
They it's a prank, but they call their pastor and say we want to get Fluffy baptized this weekend, and just let the pastor go at it.
Oh my goodness, yeah. Thankfully, I've never encountered that. Listen, I do have people who talk with very affectionate language about their animals, and so I'm not in a place where I'm going to throw stones at that. I do think there's some wise boundaries, not to begin to treat our pets, our animals as much as we love them, not to try and replace humans. However, in some of the trauma research that I've done, the idea of an emotional support animal and why that is so significant for people who've experienced trauma is very intriguing to me. So I think one of the things that we have to do in this context as we deal with these questions from a biblical worldview is we go back to creation, fall, redemption, restoration, the narrative of Scripture, and we address it from that lens while also recognizing the place from which somebody would ask this question. And so just a disclaimer, please recognize that what we're saying here is that we recognize people are they love their animals, and there's a emotional chasm that is often filled, especially in those who experience loneliness or they have these deep emotional connections with their animals. And so we respect that because animals are part of God's original creation. There's obviously a role that God designed for animals to play with human beings, even after the fall, right? Animals were not looked at as food. It wasn't until the flood that God permitted animals to be eaten. And so we recognize that animals have a place in the lives of human beings as co-inhabitors of the garden, where Adam named each one of the animals. And then as they were there together in the garden, obviously when Adam was kicked out of the garden and the garden was cursed, now that curse goes to the animals, because we see that when redemption comes, in Romans chapter 8, Creation waits with eager longing for the revealing of the sons of God. For creation, animals are part of that creation, was subjected to futility, not willingly, but because of him who subjected it, and hope that creation itself will be set free from its bondage to corruption and obtain the freedom of the glory of the children of God. So there is just as there was a co-inhabitation of the garden, there is a concurrence of movement as human beings move closer and closer to the ultimate redemption when Jesus returns and he makes all things new. The creation, the animals, as well as the other physical elements of creation, the rocks, the mountains, all those kinds of things, they await that restoration as well, because Jesus died to apply cosmic redemption. And that's why we recognize that not only do animals play a special part in our lives, but then when the animals die, there's this deep longing to know, will that animal be present in heaven, or I would probably better say the new creation. And what I tell people when they ask me this is, I say yes. I say it may not be. Because our animals don't have souls, right? But they do have a physical, material body, and they do have, especially when it comes to dogs and other animals that we've domesticated, they have this empathetic relationship with human beings. I think that will be something that we experience in the new creation. And that will be a way that God brings us back. This is famously depicted by C.S. Lewis in Narnia, right? And then it was stolen by, the Wizard of Oz, the Wicked, the play where the animals talk and then they can't talk. You're aware of this? Okay, anyway.
I'm there with you. I'm there. I'm tracking. I watched it.
And so, but C.S. Lewis, writing from that standpoint, recognizing that animals are part of God's original creation, and Narnia being this fantastical place where animals interact with human beings verbally. There's friendships that are formed there. And so I think he was envisioning that redeemed and restored world. And so I think, just as a quick answer, is that yes, if you have experienced the loss of a beloved pet that was your companion through a dark season of life, or just you remember a deeply emotionally trying season for your family when you lost a pet, that you can say to your kids or to your grandkids, or have a personal longing that when Jesus restores all things, that he will, if you are in Christ, you will experience that redeemed and restored relationship with the animals as well. So that's good news, I guess. Is that do you ever have to console people, Michelle?
Yeah, all the time.
With that, or do you go there? I mean, how do you handle that?
Sometimes it just kind of depends on the situation. Some people are like, I've already talked about faith. I know that they're faithful, will pray after their pet passes. We have in veterinary medicine a poem called The Rainbow Bridge, which is really common, and talks about how,
so that's where that comes from. Okay.
Yeah. Like where your pets wait for you and then they see you and you're greeted with all of these pets.
Don't make me cry.
And I, for a while, kind of struggled with telling that to people because I felt like I was lying.
Right.
And I think ultimately the short answer is we really don't know. Mm-hmm. But to your point, definitely there's multiple passages in the Bible where animals are important. Animals are very important to God's creation. And I don't think God would create animals and then leave them out. Like, I mean, I'm not going to say I know the mind of God, but I would think with how important they've been from, even in Revelation, like it does specifically call out specific animals, like the lion, the ox, the eagle, like we ride, there's horses, like these animals are useful. He talked through a donkey. I mean, like. There you
go, yeah. And there's a continuity. I've never thought about this until you were saying this, but there's a continuity of if animals are not an important part of creation, why build the ark to save them from the flood?
Exactly.
they, once again, going with that thought process that they're co-inhabitors and there's a concurrence of us moving towards redemption. God could have just started over, but he didn't. He wanted those animals to be saved, to experience redemption alongside Noah and his family. And so that's and we can't take that to say now we're going to have pet baptisms or blessing services, or, I mean, there are churches that do that. But we don't go that far because we recognize that the gospel is the power of God for the salvation of everyone who believes, and our animals don't have the ability to believe. And that's where we would draw, the line there. But at the same time, I think affirming that pets are an important part of life, they're also an important part of God's creation, and they'll be an important part of God's new creation. It's kind of what I kind of feel like we're giving Jonathan some hope here, because I've seen him give some facial expressions and things like that. Jonathan, did you have a deep connection with it?
I did. So when Kristen and I first started dating, we bought a husky.
Okay.
And he's been
I remember that.
Yeah. He's been gone about 2 years now.
Yeah, I remember that.
He got out and got hit. But that dog was with me through more than a lot of humans were. So that gives me some hope. And like y'all were just saying, there was a specific point that God presented those animals in front of Adam for him to name specifically. So he was like speaking, just like God spoke us into existence. It was something like speaking over them. He was calling them what they are. And that being in there signifies the importance of those creatures in creation
and the relationship there.
That's right.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think, another step further on that is these creatures were giving to us, and we are supposed to steward them correctly, just like everything else in our lives. That goes back to animals can tell who are good and bad people. And listen, I think that's a fair statement.
I guess as long as you're not in my line of work, because there's some pets that just, as much as I want them to like me, they just don't like me. And, it happens sometimes.
You're telling us you're not an evil person. But there is that, I think our dog, so we've got 2 dogs now, and we're recording this episode before my daughter's getting married on Friday. After my daughter gets married, these dogs that have been together for over a decade are being split up. And so there's this reality that I've said to my wife and other people. I'm like, I'm kind of wondering if Pugsley, who's a year older than Biscuit, that she'll grieve herself to death.
Yeah.
Because, and once again, I think dogs are unique in that way, that the empathy that dogs have, like they intuitively experience with their, their owners, their dog parent. I can't do it. I just can't do it.
Just can't do it.
So actually, elephants will have funerals. So
oh, that's right. I've seen that.
Yeah. So I think from the empathy standpoint, there may actually be other animals. Yeah. Pigs are ones that are supposed to have a lot of empathy.
They're super smart.
Yeah.
From what I hear. Yeah.
So, I think, but how much of that, going back to Genesis and the creation, man alone was made in God's image.
That's right.
And, man alone was given soul. So how much of that is us projecting those onto animals? And the importance of animals, though, in this world, I think they're one of the few things that can truly show you what it's like to have unconditional love. You get home from a bad day and, your point to your dog, it's happy to see you. Yeah. And regardless of what you look like, regardless of how you feel, having that pet be there is definitely not something we want to minimize. Growing up, I moved around a whole lot, and having my dog was like my constant companion, and that was, we've moved to a new city. I don't have any friends. Well, I can hang out with my dog. And, people have what they call heart pets, which are like, hey, this this dog helped you through so much stuff in your life, and you couldn't imagine going through that without them because there wasn't a person to go through it with.
Yeah. So that's actually my mother-in-law. When I was going through a very tough time in her life, and she was growing with the Lord. She was in the Word. She was seeking the Lord, and she had 2 dogs, Shelby, that was a Cocker Spaniel, and then Pugsley now that we have, and we inherited, that is still in my life. I really do think that was kind of an outlet for her from a conversational standpoint. Not that she was crazy or anything, but I mean, she was legitimately, sitting there, and there's the sensory with the touch of the fur. There's the warmth of the presence of another creature. And then I think to some degree, and I think this goes back to the emotional support animal thing, that the not talking back, the no judgment, right? That's like, for some people, that's significant to them, And so that's why that's why those emotional connections with animals are so deep. And so, yeah, I think there's something there that even we don't fully understand that maybe we'll understand even in eternity. So famous story about there was a missionary to the island of Vanuatu named John Patton, and cannibals lived on Vanuatu, and he was a Scottish missionary and was there by himself, except for his little Scottish terrier. And there are story after story of how that Scottish terrier saved his life from these cannibals, right? That God used this dog to, So I guess that means that if dogs are the manifestation or the display of unconditional love, then cats are
pure
hatred,
evil.
No, I think it depends on like what you have that connection with. So while I had my dog, my sister had her cat.
Yeah.
So like she carried that same emotional connection to that cat as I carried with my dog.
Has there ever been any research on like if there's if a person owns a dog, they're close to that dog, and they own a cat, the cat hates everybody? Or if it's just a person with a cat, then there can be that connection there because the cat still.
My grandparents own a cat, and
you don't
evil.
own cats. Cats own
Cats
you.
own you.
Correct. Well, that cat is
identified
evil.
a distinction. See, that's where
it's just one cat by itself has the best life.
But still, there's I'd kill you in your sleep if I could.
Yeah.
That kind of.
Yeah. Yes.
If you're a cat owner listening to this, don't unsubscribe. I think I actually sometimes can appreciate the cat more than I do the dogs.
Yeah.
Because so all of our animals were named after breakfast foods. First, that was a tradition that started long ago. We had Grits, who was a dog, and then Grits died. We had Syrup. We had Gravy. We had now we have Patty Sausage, and then Muffin was her sister who died when we moved to Scottsboro, and then we have Biscuit, and Pugsley was just the name that my mother-in-law gave her dog because she loved Adam's Family. But we almost renamed her Pancake because that's kind of the color that she is. So anyway, it's that's one of those things about the Johnson family that I guess if we ever, because I keep being told, well, after those dogs, you're gonna have to get a dog for the babies, and I'm like, I kind of thought we were through the pet stage, but if Lily had her way, she'd have a corgi tomorrow. Are corgis good dogs to have? Do you have any knowledge of?
I think that
Speak truth.
that dogs need good training.
Mm-hmm.
All dogs need good training.
All dogs need good training.
Like all husbands, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Good point. Point taken.
But I think kind of going back to the emotional connection for a second, I have seen positives and negatives with that.
Mm-hmm.
I've had 3 clients commit suicide after pets have passed away because of that connection. So, I think having understanding that is definitely important. And I don't know if the person who asked this question was going through that loss. But I do think, again, short answer, we don't know if we're going to see our actual pets, but pets are important in God's creation.
Yes.
Absolutely. And that, folks, is a great place to stop, because we have deeply enjoyed our time with Dr. Michelle Shelton and on this episode of the Curious Faith podcast. And so thank you for listening to this episode of Curious Faith. If today's episode helped you, then share it with a friend who might be asking the same question, and make sure you tell them, if they own a cat, that we don't hate cats. And if you got a question you'd like featured on a future episode, then email us at questions@curiousfaithpodcast.com. We love to hear from you. This podcast is sponsored by Agape Baptist Church. You can learn more about Agape and our outreach ministries through the Community Care Village by visiting our website and seeing how you can get connected. Until next time, stay curious and keep growing in the faith.